Yo, I love using that that countdown. We'll just take a couple of seconds just to make sure that we're going live all across the different platforms. Yep, that's live there. Nice. How's everyone going? I'll turn these questions off. I just wanted to jump on and just quickly say welcome to everyone. Look, it's been a big week. It's been a big 10 weeks. And to be honest, I'm very tired. I'm in need of a haircut, in need of a shave, and I'm probably in need of a few extra burpees, considering all this food I've been eating. But I'm trying to be kind to myself and not be too down. I did some good stairs today. And the thing about exercise, it's not just about the physical. It just makes me feel so much better mentally. What's up, Hiro? So look, we're going to jump straight into this. I'll bring in, thanks team. Hey, everyone, thanks Leanne, everyone that's watching, please hit the share now. Hey, Brenda, we've got a really good one today. So it's really good that I want as many people to see this as possible. We'll bring on the doctor. What's up, doctor?
Yeah.
All good also?
All good. It's been a good week. And, I was talking to one fellow who was a bit scared about getting the vaccine. And once I told him that he wasn't going to get any metal poisoning from the injection, I told him about what you were doing at Countdown, Manukau, wasn't it? Beginning of the week? On the Monday and the Tuesday there. And he was so disappointed he didn't know about it because he would have loved to have won $5,000. So, that was quite a busy few days for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was hectic, man. And it was, we done a few hundred, and the thing is, we only really did it on one day's notice. And anyone who knows me knows I'm pretty impromptu, and so we just got it done. But what surprised me was the level of the amount of hate I got. Man, it was crazy. And really, the hate. That really got, normally I don't read it, I don't read it, don't really worry too much about it, but it reminded me back of my boxing days when almost everyone hated me. So it stirred me up. And we talk about going down that rabbit hole. Don't go down that rabbit hole. I went right down it, and I was up late at night and I was messaging back and commenting back, but the one that got me was when some people would say, because we offered the prize money, and number one, people would say, did the government give you that one? Well, no, they've only just started supporting us, so they definitely weren't going to, give me money to put on that. That came from our own fundraising, and also, Pack and Save Manukau put up the other half. But then the other thing that got me was, think of all the kids this could feed. And that really made me angry, because we've been, we've fed literally tens of thousands of our people, out of our own efforts and out of our own pockets. So that's what stirred me up. And unfortunately, I went right down the rabbit hole and got started. But it did upset me. I actually got really angry, just because it's just, you could tell that these people that were hating on me and being the anti-vaxxers were not people that have followed me, because I've got anti-vax friends, and some people don't know that I know they're anti-vaxxers, but they're still my friends, and they're respectful to me. And even on these videos, they're respectful, and they still tune in and watch. And but I can tell that there was the ones that were coming at me weren't people that really knew anything about the work that we do. So we had a question, bro, last week, and you wanted to go back to it, which was good, and also. The lady who asked us question got vaccinated this week. So these talks, bro, are making a difference. And I just want to go in. I think it's important that I read this post. I won't say the name of the lady, even though she commented last week. Where is it? Well, we did it. Got my first vaccine, and it wasn't easy to face my fear, but I'm doing fine. I had my girls there. Debbie also got hers. We quickly wanted to see if we were magnetic. Our doctor was happy to join our quest. She showed us how Sammy, who's only young, how Sammy is magnetic, and she hasn't had the vaccine. So thank you for all the support from our friends who understood our fears. So
That's
the lady
awesome.
who wrote this, that was amazing, eh?
That's amazing.
And lots of people have been coming up to me and messaging and saying that these talks have really helped them. And it's all about making an informed choice.
Yeah.
It's not about forcing anyone to do anything. I did get a little bit of criticism last week saying that I was a bit too biased. But this is it's my choice, and but I'm not forcing it. I'm just trying to give educated advice. What do you reckon?
Absolutely. I think that people can make their own choices, but there's a lot of concern about what else is on Facebook, and there are a lot of people who are giving, unfortunately, misinformation and putting a lot of people off, and so it makes it a lot harder for us to try and give them the right information for them to trust what we're saying, and that's why we encourage them to talk to others who have been vaccinated, so they can find out firsthand from people that they trust in their own circles.
Yeah, and I think that's what helped her. This particular lady, who's a member of ours, is one of our other members, who's a truck driver, was caught up with her, at social distance, and said a talk, and he was vaccinated. And what he said was, look, we're both overweight. We both have underlying health issues. If we get COVID, we're in a lot more trouble. So, and also just thinking of your daughter that's at home that's not vaccinated because she's too young. So that's, I think, what got her across the line. But it's like you said, just having those conversations. I actually listened on Talkback. You're getting old when you listen to Talkback, but I listen to Talkback all the time. But I listened to a guy, I forgot his name, he's a doctor too, a psychologist. But he's talking about when you're talking to people that are against the vaccine or hesitant or sitting on the fence, you don't talk to them, you don't tell them to just go get it, just go get it. What they were saying, it made sense, was you just talk to them as if you have no preconceived ideas, you have no opinion. You're just talking to them. And then when they talk about their fears, and it might be fears they're getting from misinformation, you can talk to them about, you talk them through it. And that helped. But this is a big one, bro. This thing, Medsafe lists deaths from vaccines every week. September 25th, 8 people died from it. Now, everyone, you'll see that every anti-vaxxer or anyone can go on there, and they always quote Medsafe. So can you talk us about that, please, bro?
Sure. So I went back, and thanks for that question. That was a good question. I went and actually had a look at that report from Medsafe, and it was a report that was actually up to all the reports up to the 25th of September that were reported to Medsafe. And there were 75 deaths, not 8, 75 deaths. And they investigated all of them. They found of the 75, 27 unlikely related to COVID vaccine. 14 deaths, they didn't have enough information to be sure if there was a linkage or not. 33 cases at that time were still under investigation, but still only the one death that is due to that heart-related condition that we talked about in that patient that was a woman in her early 50s. So I reviewed the next report because it comes out weekly, and essentially it's the same kind of report where similarly there's 86 deaths. This is up to the 2nd of October. 31 unlikely related to COVID vaccine. 26 deaths, not enough information. 28 still under investigation. And only the one death likely due to that the vaccine-induced myocarditis, as they call it. But they're awaiting that coroner's report with a determination. So similar sort of numbers, really. But so there are reports, but I think the bottom line is, at this stage, despite millions and millions of vaccines being given around the world, the number of deaths potentially related to the vaccine is like 1 in millions. All right, we're talking about. So whereas we know if you get COVID, the death rate's way, way higher. So the message, as we've said before, is protect yourself, protect your loved ones, and the best way we recommend is to get vaccinated. And I think, as we're seeing the number of cases going up as they have this week, we're seeing the climbing numbers that are ending up in hospital as well. And I think that the data that's coming through is speaking for itself. We're expecting the numbers to go up into the 200s per day in November at the current kind of rates that we're seeing at the moment. So even today, where there was about 80 cases that were reported, over 40 of them were unlinked. So, I think there's a lot of COVID that's out there. So everyone wants to make sure that they're not going to bring something home. So the safest way to protect people at home is to make sure yourself that you're vaccinated. If you've got symptoms, get tested. I had a couple of interesting patients that I saw today. One was a girl that had Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's it's a blood cancer, and she fortunately got cleared of that illness earlier in the year, and she was doing the right thing by getting the 3rd dose. Right, so if you've got a blood cancer, or if you're on medications because it affects your immunity, like say for example you've got a inflammatory bowel problem or something like that, then you can be on medications that can suppress your immune system. So the government this week said, look, for those people who don't have a good immune system, you may need to have a 3rd dose. And so she contacted me this morning and was really keen to get her 3rd dose to make sure that she was protected. So it's a very small number of people that will be eligible for that. But just to let you know about that group. The other lady I saw today was a 68-year-old lady who she just had her 2nd dose not quite 2 weeks ago. And for her, because she hadn't had that 14 days pass or elapse since the 2nd dose, she didn't have that full protection of the 2nd dose yet. And sure enough, she came down with symptoms, cough, shortness of breath. And when I got her to walk for a minute, her oxygen levels dropped. So they were, while she was resting, around about 93 to 95% on air, which, the normal sort of like 94% upwards. And I just got her to walk for about a minute. And I checked her again, and her oxygen levels had dropped down to 85%.
Wow.
So I sent her to hospital. So, there's a possibility that she could have COVID because she didn't quite have that protection from the 2nd dose yet, because it hadn't been 2 weeks since the 2nd dose. So just thought I'd highlight those cases today because they highlight a couple of important things. One is if you think you don't have a very good immune system, just check with your doctor to see if you qualify for a 3rd dose. And the second one is that having, you need to allow 7 to 14 days after the 2nd dose to make sure that you're fully protected. And unfortunately for this lady, everyone else in her family's well and truly had their 2nd doses, but for her, she didn't quite get there, and she has come down with symptoms. So it is out there, and just do your best to get as vaccinated as quickly as you can.
Yeah, and sorry, bro, we just had a few more people join just on that Medsafe. So can you explain what Medsafe is again? Because you see it all the time. So when you're trying to talk to someone about, that's has their mind made up, they'll always bring up, but Medsafe says this, So what is Medsafe?
So Medsafe is New Zealand's Medicines and Medical Devices Safety Authority. So all the pharmaceutical companies that want to have medications available in New Zealand, they have to submit all their data to Medsafe to scrutinize to make sure that their medicines are safe to be available in New Zealand. And if the data isn't good enough, it doesn't get listed, right? So it's quite strict. And the government only has funding for so many medicines as well. So there's lots of safeguards there to make sure that our medicines are fit for purpose and safe.
And bro, that question, just for the people that are just joining in, where they had on the 25th, this was a question from last week, as I lost my pen. The 25th listed 8 people died from it. And then can you just go just briefly into those numbers again, when you've, because you have to go further than those numbers, right? You have to investigate into each case.
Yeah. So each week, Medsafe produce a report, and as in response to the question that we had, where they said that there were 8 deaths. In fact, when we had a look at the report, there was actually 75 deaths that were reported, right? And then Medsafe investigate each of those reports. And the long story short is that there's still only the 1 death which is thought to be likely due to vaccine-induced myocarditis. In other words, it affects the heart. And that was in that lady that was in the early 50s. And that's still waiting determination by the coroner, but that's the only one at this stage that's thought to be likely to be due to the vaccine. All the others are either unrelated, there's either insufficient information to link it, or they're still under investigation. So, fortunately, the numbers, it's swinging very, very much in favor of the vaccine being safe.
Because there's millions that have been giving out. And like you said, but you can see why people latch onto it, right? And if they're not, if they don't go and do a further investigation or really know how to read the report properly, they're going to go off in their own tangent. You can see why how easy it is to happen.
It is, and I think that sometimes someone says this and someone says that, and by the time it's got to the 5th person, the numbers have changed a little bit, if you know what I mean. So yeah, but I mean, it's a good question, and we appreciate all those questions. So keep them rolling in.
All right, we've got a couple from the crowd. We're going to make this a little bit shorter because we're both very tired, and we both got big days tomorrow. So we got Antonia has asked, it's what's inside vaccine. It removes all of your white cells. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm not too sure where that information came from. It certainly doesn't do that. So we have to remember that the way these vaccines work, and this is one of the very first questions that we had 3 weeks ago, is how do the mRNA vaccines work? Or how do the traditional sort of virus vector type vaccines work? And essentially what they do is they put clothes on that makes them look like the spike protein of a COVID virus, right? So the mRNA vaccines are proteins, and they mimic or look like a spike protein, and that's what makes the body mount its own defense, which includes white blood cells against the virus virus lookalike particles. And so that's what mounts our antibody response, or our immune response, or our body's defense against infection. So it doesn't do any harm at all to white cells. Otherwise, we wouldn't be suggesting that people who have got blood cancers, leukemias, for example, where they've got hardly any white cells, why would we suggest that they have the vaccine if it attacked the white cells? It doesn't make sense, right? So the good news is, no, it doesn't harm your white cells at all. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I think that was that person is a fake account, by the looks of it, and it's just commenting some spam. But we're not afraid to take questions and answer questions, any questions. But when you start spamming, you just get deleted. We're not taking it. We're not taking it. We've got a question here from Jobus. How many vaccines left? I'm not too sure what that question means. Does that mean how many vaccines are available left? Yeah. To be given to the public? Yeah. I believe there's heaps, because Jacinda did a good job of actually getting in a whole lot to make sure there was plenty to go around. So we've got more vaccines available than there are people to be jabbed. Right? Because we got heaps we borrowed some from Spain, we borrowed some from another country. I can't remember which other country that was now, but we've got so many shipments in now that we've got ample amounts of vaccine to give every New Zealander, everyone in New Zealand, an opportunity to get vaccinated. We've got a question here, bro. why aren't there reports and investigations by the coroner for COVID deaths? Most of these have had underlying conditions.
Yeah, so the coroner, good questions. The coroner investigates any cases where it's unclear what's the cause of death, right? So you'll see that one where it was thought to be related to the vaccine was referred to the coroner. And that's the one that we're waiting confirmation on to say, yes, it looks like this was a vaccine-related death, right? But we've seen from the Medsafe data that close to a third are definitely unrelated to the vaccine. It's just natural causes. In fact, when you look at the Medsafe reports, they comment on something called the death from natural causes rate, right? In other words, people are dying just from natural causes all the time, and they have a rate at which that occurs. And what they've said is that at the moment, the number of deaths is actually less than the usual natural death rate, right? So it's not increased just because we're vaccinating so many people. So that's one thing to note. But yeah, at this stage, there isn't really the most of the cases that are as I say, there was 86 in the last report this week, 75 the week before. Many of those, there's it's natural causes, right? It's clearly not related to having a vaccination. There are some that there's just not enough information to be able to make a link. But if there was any doubt about why someone died, those cases get reported to the coroner, because the doctor cannot write a death certificate if they don't have a clear, obvious cause for that patient dying. So so anything, if there's ever any uncertainty, it goes to the coroner.
I've got a question here from Janina. What about pregnant breastfeeding mums? Will there be side effects or something happen to milk supply? I know that we answered that before, but I think it's an important question to answer again. Yeah.
Look, we know that pregnant mums are at higher risk. They're in the higher risk group if they get COVID. And more so later on in the pregnancy as baby is growing, and if mum was to get COVID, then it would be a risk to her and the baby. So many women have had the vaccine who have been pregnant, and there've been no problems. There are some pregnant women that haven't had the vaccine and have been in hospital, and I think you've probably seen that in the last week, where I think there were 5 pregnant women in hospital who hadn't been vaccinated. So it is important that women that are pregnant make sure that they are protected and that their unborn babies are protected. I wouldn't have suggested my own family get vaccinated, because I'm expecting another grandchild soon, and so they asked me, "Hey, is it safe to have?" And of course, my recommendation was that it was safe for them to have, and they should protect themselves and protect the unborn child. So they've gone ahead and done it, and no problems.
I think it's good when you give first-hand knowledge, experience of what you've gone through with your own. And I see a lot of questions coming through about government and freedom and all this type of stuff. Look, none of us here work for the government, and we have no idea, no influence on the government. So these talks are not government funded. We weren't asked by anyone to do it. We were not paid to do it from any health agency. Happy to take some money from health agency, but it won't change the way that we talk about things here. I got a question here. Choice of vaccine is available in most countries except Israel. Why can't we be offered choice?
Yeah, I believe there will be some choice available later. I think at the moment, we know that the Pfizer Comirnaty vaccine is the most effective vaccine. It's more effective than AstraZeneca, the Novavax, and Moderna. So obviously, we want everyone to be protected with the best protection available at the moment. And at the moment, that's the Pfizer Comirnaty vaccine. So why would we offer you something that's not as effective? if we look at AstraZeneca, that was the first vaccine to be rolled out in Australia. And unfortunately, there were some patients that did get some side effects related to clotting. And that caused a lot of Australians to pause, saying, hey, we don't want to have this AstraZeneca, we want the Pfizer vaccine. And so along came the Pfizer vaccine in Australia. And I know my cousins in Australia were reluctant to have the AstraZeneca one, but as soon as the Pfizer one came, they got vaccinated with Pfizer, and they've been just fine.
Yeah, that's the hard thing, when things happen like that. It's just like, when you told us last week about, what actually happened with the measles, outbreak more. Just for those who didn't join us last week, you want to quickly take us through what happened there? Because I remember, helping to send coffins over, and it's me to this day. But I didn't know the backstory.
Yeah, so that was a very sad thing in Samoa. Unfortunately, there was a district hospital where there isn't the same level of supervision. You could say it's like in the rural settings. And one nurse, there was only one nurse, the same nurse, there were 2 vaccine-related deaths. And what had happened was that the nurse had mixed the vaccine with another drug rather than with the water or saline that's used to mix up vaccine powders, right, to turn it into something that can be injected. So these, in 2 separate cases, children died from having vaccines. And as a result of that publicity in Samoa, you can imagine there was a huge fear that just spread across the island, both Apollo and Savaii. And it just, vaccine rates plummeted, and no one was getting the measles vaccine. And so what Dave and I were talking about last week was that it's like an Australian bushfire. I don't know if you've seen that program on the telly about gold hunters. It can get really hot in the outback, 45 degrees plus over there. And sometimes fires break out, and the bushfires happen, and they just everything catches fire and goes alight. And this was the problem in Samoa with measles. Because the vaccination rates were so low, it just took a few cases of the measles to break out. And measles is like super infectious. So often you'll hear the Prime Minister talking about something called an R value. And the R value is the reproductive rate in terms of how easily is it spread, right? So if we look at the common flu, it might have an R value of, let's say, 1, where one person gets it and they're likely to pass it on to one individual. If we look at this COVID virus last year, when it came out with the alpha strain, the R value was thought to be somewhere between 3 and 5. So if one person gets it, they're likely to pass it on to 3 or 5 people that are around them. If we look at measles, the R value is about 16.
Jeez.
One person gets it, 16 people can get it. So, when we were worried about measles over here, because after it hit Samoa and just sort of like killed so many kids, if we look at how effective measles is, you can definitely be inside any building really, and you can pass measles to someone in that same building if you've not vaccinated. So fortunately in New Zealand, we're pretty well vaccinated against measles. But in Samoa, unfortunately, because of those fears that arose from those vaccine deaths, that got around, and no one got their children vaccinated. And then, unfortunately, we had all those deaths in Samoa with children passing away. And that was a tragedy, real tragedy.
Yeah, and I spoke to Tuala, who is a COVID survivor here. His wife got it as well, and they were in the news. He's a community leader.
Yes.
And he came and helped with our vaccination there, and he was talking about how bad COVID was, how bad he felt, and how his wife had a temperature of 42. And the doctors actually was almost dead. It was only, and so it was really interesting to talk to him about, and he was the main driver. He was the one who organized his ASA Foundation, was the organization that organized all this money, food, coffins, and fundraising, and we're there helping him. But he was talking about, his experience with COVID, and I think it's important that people like that get out there and talk, that our people listen to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got a question here, bro. I'm not sure what. So the 14-year-old and 17-year-old dropped dead. Why? Have you heard of anything here?
No, I'm not too sure what this relates to. A 14-year-old and a 17-year-old dropped dead. I haven't heard anything about that. So, I mean, just remember that, I mean, it's unusual for 14-year-olds and 17-year-olds to drop dead, right? I mean, they're typically fit and healthy, right? And maybe they're reported in these cases, right? Maybe they're under investigation. I don't know, right? I can't really comment on those cases specifically, but no doubt that as part of the investigation, they look to see, is this because of an underlying condition that nobody knew about? And if that's the case, these are the kinds of cases that get referred to the coroner. If we're not sure about why would a healthy 14-year-old drop dead or a healthy 17-year-old drop dead, that's unusual, right? No doctor would be able to sign a death certificate to say, why would a 14-year-old previously healthy person or a 17-year-old previously healthy person drop dead? That's an automatic coroner. So no doctor can sign a death certificate, and so it will be investigated. So I can't answer that question specifically because but someone will be investigating it and looking into it, and it probably may be the coroner if there's no obvious underlying history.
I'm just reading some of these comments, and it's just we're just trying to get information out there, team, and you can choose whether to listen or whether to not. Our whole family's been vaccinated, the doctor as well, and we're just giving information, and we're not hiding any questions. So we've got a question here. How come the science experts only giving vaccines as treatment? I'm not sure what that means.
I think what it means is that why is that the only option being given at the moment, and as opposed to some other treatment? And what we do know, and we touched on this last week with the ivermectin, for example, a medication that's given for tropical diseases like filariasis. We know that there's no evidence for those treatments that they make any difference to our outcomes in terms of people who've got COVID and that they improve with those medications. We know that those who are in intensive care, who are close to dying, they will get the best medicines that are possibly available. So they get medicines to help them to breathe, because that seems to be the biggest problem that they face when they're close to dying. They all report difficulty breathing. They also get some antibody type treatments to try and help combat the response as well. But what they do is they take an evidence-based approach. In other words, they look at what's the strongest evidence that we've got that this really works, and they won't give it to people unless it's strong enough or unless it's the last-ditch effort to try and save someone's life, right? But the long story short is, at this stage, there are no treatments that work against COVID that guarantee to help. We know that the majority of people that get COVID don't end up in hospital. Generally it's a milder illness compared to those that end up in hospital. So in other words, they don't have an oxygen requirement. So it's like a really bad flu. And anyone that you speak to that's had COVID will tell you that it's like the worst flu they've ever had. They all report that they have had problems breathing. They all report that they've had fever and aching and that sort of thing. And as I mentioned last week, when I was speaking to someone who'd had COVID and had recovered, who'd went back to work 2 months or so after he'd recovered from the virus, he was only able to stay at work for a day or so, and then he had to go back home again because he got really, really tired. couldn't work. So the thing we emphasized last week was this long COVID and this sort of effect that the virus can have. It's not just like a simple flu where it can come and go. It can stick around, right? So that's why we're sort of giving these messages so that people know what they're up for, particularly if they haven't had the vaccine. I was looking at some data this week of those that end up in who get COVID. 90% are unvaccinated. 7% have only had one dose of the vaccine, and only 3% of people that end up in hospital have had 2 doses of the vaccine. Right, so by far,
what's that? 3%. So only
3%.
Yeah.
So 90% of people who end up in hospital have had no vaccines. 7% have had only one vaccine, and only 3% have had two doses of the vaccine.
I mean, I'm no good at math. Doctor, but that's some pretty good odds if you know. It's there on paper right there. I got a question from Jan, who's a member of our group, and she has clinical trials for the vaccine don't finish till 2023. Can you speak to that, Doctor? Thanks.
Yeah, so good question, Jan. There are clinical trials ongoing all the time for various types of vaccines. So Novavax is a good example of that, when we talked about that last week. So clinical trials are still ongoing for Novavax, which is why it's not available here at the moment. We know that the mRNA technology, which is the technology that's used to make the Pfizer vaccine, has been around for years. So that's old technology. That's why we've gone with an mRNA vaccine as opposed to the other types of vaccines, because the work has been done for that. But yeah, there are ongoing trials all the time. There's ongoing studies looking at, like, for example, these death rates, right? So everyone's always looking at how do we make things safer? How do we, how do we know how long the actual vaccines last for, right? So that's all part of our trials, looking at, okay, we want to get people protected, right? But then we have to look at, well, actually, how long is that protection going to last for, right? And we talked about this last week. Is it 6 months? Is it 8 months? We don't know yet. And that's why these trials are ongoing, because we're still trying to look at how, the effectiveness of these vaccines. So we know that we need some immediate protection, and that's why we've gone for an elimination strategy up front. But if we look at how we're doing compared to Australia, even, we're doing so well, right? So I think part of that's because New Zealand as a whole has come together to try and make sure that as many people are protected as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think I was talking to a friend of mine who's vaccine hesitant. And he was talking to me, look, I don't think the vaccine, well, he knows the vaccine won't do any harm to him. He's young and fit. He knows it won't do any harm, but he doesn't see why he should get it. And these are the people I'm trying to talk to. Just saying, look, it's not just for you; it's for everyone else. We got to pull together here on this one. And just on these, there are a few of these anti-vaxxer haters coming through. And the thing about it, team, is that I'm not going on anyone's page and I'm talking about get the vaccine, you should get it, and here's why, all the facts, just spewing up all the facts. What we're doing here is giving information, solid information from a credible source. You can choose to take it or not. And the thing is, I got a question the other day about our food bank. And someone asked me, do you have to be vaccinated to get a food pass? Well, no, you don't. We serve everyone. Our food bank is there for the vulnerable and for everyone and anyone. Got another question here, bro. We'll take a few more. I said it's going to be quick, and it's already been 40 minutes. This one here. What are your thoughts on mandatory vaccinations for health and education workers? Obviously, it's for the benefit of our vulnerable population, but seems like a bold step to make it mandatory.
Yeah, look, everyone that's vaccinated doesn't want to get the virus and take it home to their loved ones, right? That's why they got vaccinated. And I think that we know that if we look at the education sector, for example, we know that at this stage, those children under the age of 12 are unable to get vaccinated. So potentially they can carry the virus. And that's a concern for educationalists, right? And if you look at secondary schools, many of the secondary schools don't want to open next week, right? Because they're fearful that they know that not all secondary school students have been vaccinated, right? And, you know, I guess we're talking about super spreader type things, situations. And so I think that we're just trying to keep everyone as safe as possible. I think that in the health sector, we know that there are even some health professionals that haven't been vaccinated, believe it or not. And what we have to be concerned about.
So that was a question I saw come through with why are some health professionals not getting it?
Yeah, there are. I guess at this stage, everybody has a right to choose, right? And some health professionals have chosen not to, as surprising as that might seem, right? They have their reasons. They're, presumably fully informed like everybody else, but they've chosen not to for whatever reason that might be. And for some people, it's religious reasons. Some people, it's just personal reasons. But as you say, we respect people enough that they can make up their own mind. But what's happening, and as what the question referred to, is about mandatory vaccination for people in certain occupations. And I guess the reason why we're talking about health is that healthcare professionals is that, you know, we're obviously dealing with vulnerable patients who the last thing they want to get on top of their reason why they're coming to see us or ending up in hospital is the last thing they want is COVID. So, you know, we're seeing people with non-COVID related disease who we have to send to hospital. Some people have had heart attacks and they don't have COVID, but they're not coming in because they don't want to get COVID in the general practice or they don't want to get COVID in the hospital. They're scared to go to hospital, right? So what we can do to reassure the public as much as we can is to make sure that as many people are vaccinated, and that includes health professionals as well as teachers, because, you know, as I say, with children, that's a big group that aren't able to be vaccinated at the moment. We know that in the UK, in the US, they're starting to immunize 5 to 12-year-old children. And before long, it'll be 6 months to 4 years.
Well, I had on that mandatory stuff, from a business perspective, like I talked to some of my friends who own gyms, and it actually makes it a lot easier if the government mandate it, because geez, it's hard, dealing with members, because some members, they might not want to get vaccinated. Then there's other members who won't come unless people are vaccinated. So it is a tough one from a business point of view. It's actually easier if the government come out and say, for these particular areas, we're going to mandate it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you've got to feel sorry for a lot of business owners, don't you? Yeah. Whose businesses have gone under as a result of these lockdowns. I feel for all those business people but not only that, it's that people who are receiving that allowance from the government, you know, it's not the same as their full pay. People are struggling, and, you know, what we're seeing is that, with the government's pushing hard to try and get 90% double vaxxed, right? And then they're going to introduce this passport system, which will also create problems for people, you know, if they're not vaccinated. So for those that are fully vaccinated, they're going to have all the freedoms. But at the moment, until we're there,
what's your thoughts, bro? What's your thoughts on say BBM? We're not we're a different kind of gym because we're not a business, you know. We don't charge any of our members. So, but you know, a lot of the people we serve are vulnerable.
Yeah,
you have underlying health conditions. What would be, because I've been asking this question around, you know, that's around different advisors to me for me about what would your advice be in terms of, so all of our team leaders are going to, everyone that takes a class is going to be vaccinated. But what's your thoughts on members coming in? What would you do?
Yeah, well, look, for the benefit of those that are vaccinated, we just have to remember that the vaccine gives you 95% protection. It doesn't give you 100% protection, right? And what we don't know is, for those that have been vaccinated, are you part of the 95 or are you part of the 5 that's going to get it, right? And so, we've got the best protection possible by being vaccinated. But if you look at someone coming into the building that's not been vaccinated at all, who can potentially carry the virus and not have any symptoms, and no fault of their own, they've got it, right? But they come in, they're feeling well, but unfortunately they're carrying it. So you can imagine the effect that will have on everybody else, because I think as a business, you've got a responsibility to keep everyone that comes to your business safe, right? And I think part of that is ensuring that, that as many people know that the people that come into this building have all been vaccinated, and have produced a record to say that this is legit, that they are protected against carrying the virus, right? So I think everyone wants those assurances. We can only do so much, can't we? But I think it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah. Yes, and it is tough. It is freedom of choice. Even the government, if they're just going to make it harder on people that aren't vaccinated, but you still get from what I'm reading, all the essential stuff's still fine, but it's just going to, this hairdressers, gyms, and stuff like that's going to. Yeah, it's I'm interested to see how this all goes, eh?
Particularly since when it comes to testing, right? Like people are talking about getting this rapid antigen testing, where you get a swab in your nose, or you do a saliva test where your results available in 20 minutes. Those tests aren't widely available yet because they're expensive, right? Or when it comes to rapid antigen testing and just the swab in the front of the nose, they're still being trialed at the moment in terms of how effective that is compared to the one right at the back of the nose. So it would be nice if the saliva testing was more available to everybody.
Yeah.
So that, for example, if we looked at BBM, if you could say, okay, you can come in, provided you've had a saliva test and that's negative, you may not be fully vaccinated. That's some level of assurance that you're not carrying something, right? And what people want to know is that they're safe coming to your place, right? And business owners can only do so much. Can only, like if we look at supermarkets, they can try to restrict the numbers coming in and so forth, but you can only do so much to try and keep everyone safe. Supermarkets haven't gone to the extent of saying, look, you can only shop if you've got a passport. You know what I mean? So everyone's doing the best they can, but trying to allow everyone as much freedom as possible.
Yeah. Just the last couple of questions, team, we're going to wrap up. But there was one, I've been speaking to a few of our team and a few of my, really good friends who are vaccine hesitant, and then we talk about it, and it's for good reason. There's been people that have had really adverse, with baby, might be 30 years ago when they've had a baby, and that had an adverse reaction to a vaccine back then. So it's always going to be hard for those people to vaccinate now, right? What would you say to people like that are going through those types of struggles? Because that's legitimate, that's not being an anti-vaxxer, that's legitimate fear.
Yeah. So not all vaccines are the same, right? So we know that getting vaccinated against the measles is not the same as getting a polio medicine, right? Or something against whooping cough. All the vaccines are different in terms of what they contain to try and produce a immune response. So just because you've had a reaction to one vaccine doesn't mean you're going to get a reaction to other vaccines. In the same way that just because you react to an antibiotic doesn't mean you're going to be allergic to all antibiotics. It's just going to be antibiotics with the same class. And penicillins is a good example of that. So, we're aware of what kind of reactions can occur in response to certain medicines. And at the moment, the only contraindication to having a COVID vaccine is if you've had it before and had an allergic reaction to it. But at the moment, there's no contraindication to having the COVID vaccine. And that was, I think, a question last week that we had when people were asking about getting a medical exemption to not get the vaccine. And we talked about previous allergic reactions to a COVID vaccine. And the other one we mentioned was if they'd had a side effect like a heart problem or something like that.
All right, this is our second to last question. I keep saying it, but it's 100% our second to last question, brother. Can I ask how reliable is the saliva testing?
So, hi, Leila. That's a good question. And the answer is it's reliable. It's expensive. That's the problem. The results are available in about 20 minutes.
Is this going to come in anytime soon, you reckon? Is this going to be widely available?
I believe businesses can, but there's obviously the people that have gone and done this technology have had a whole lot of costs up front in terms of designing things. So they've got to recoup those costs. So unfortunately, the cost at the moment is a couple of $100, I think, per test.
One test.
One test, yeah. So I don't know the exact cost, but I know that the cost is quite a lot if you're looking at doing it to everybody that comes to visit your business. The costs would be quite considerable.
Geez, well, yeah, especially when you think about BBM. Back in the old days when we started, bro, we had a big venue. We'd have 150, 200 people in one class.
Yeah.
Gone are those days, bro. Hey.
Yeah, wow.
And now, when we move to this new venue, we might have 50, 60, 70, and even that's a whole heap. Like those days are gone. It's sad, because I love those big classes and the vibe.
Yeah.
I'm thinking when we come back to being allowed to train inside, I'm thinking, 10, 15 people, and then we're gonna have to do add more classes on, and in between each class, clean everything down. We're just gonna have to do it because especially with our brand, with our our profile out there, as much as people like us and what we do, it'll quickly be in the media for the wrong reasons as well, so it's it's going to be tough when we do come back. And this is our last question, brother.
No good. But I think it's going to be good if a lot of the patrons come back because they've been double vaccinated, right? So
yes.
What's that space? They might be coming back before you know it because these are the benefits of being double vaccinated. You're going to be able to go and get your haircut. You're going to be able to go and get your fix from BBM and what have you, right? So I think we're all looking forward to when that can happen.
Yeah, driving around today and seeing different vaccination places, I went to one in particular. It was quite busy. And then looking around, we had the MMT one yesterday, and they did just an amazing job over the last couple of days. So I'm thinking now that there's a target of where we've got to get, I'm thinking it's motivated people to go and do it.
Yeah.
That's the vibe I'm getting. But we still need to get our Māori youth, right? That's the target population that's
our Māori full up, really. I think, when I saw the data come through, the Pacifica data is doing really well. That's really encouraging to see. It's our Māori population that are still, lagging behind in terms of the numbers. So, but, we're seeing people come through for their first dose every day. So it's encouraging to see that.
Bit by bit. We always say in BBM, bit by bit. Bit by bit.
Yeah.
And vaccination it's a big part of it. And one of the other things I'm saying, people are saying to me, but people that are vaccinated think that they're no one can touch them, the virus can't touch them. And that's the thing, well, no one's saying that. You've still got, the one thing I'm seeing from what we're doing here in New Zealand with the government is that it's a cautious approach, right?
Yeah.
And I think we've learned from what's going on overseas, and we're taking it nice and slow and bit by bit. And I think I do think, although it's tough, really tough on businesses, and we are a business too, it's the right approach, bit by bit, and making sure that you still got to wear your mask, you still got to social distance, you still got to sanitize, even with the vaccination,
Yeah.
It's part of it. And just like, you've got to, again, exercise New Zealand, I was reading something that, that they put up that 75 minutes of intense exercise means that if you do get COVID, you're 250% less likely to go to hospital. That's of 75 intense or 150 of easy exercise, 150 minutes. So that's on Exercise New Zealand site. So that was good, because that's what we do, it's all part of it: exercising, eating right, and getting vaccinated. So last question, brother.
Okay.
Is it only unvaxxed people who can pass it on, or can it fully vaxxed people also pass it on?
We know that it's less transmissible if you've been fully vaccinated. So I think the answer to your question is that by far the majority of people that are going to be able to pass it more easily are the unvaccinated. I believe the vaccinated people can, but it's a lot harder to, because it's one that's harder for them to get infected in the first place. And it's not as transmissible if you've been fully vaccinated. So I hope that answers the question.
Sorry, bro. There is one more really good question here. And this is us. And team, we're going to go through the questions that are still coming through, and we'll do it again next week. There's lots of good questions come through, but I just want to just answer this one, because it's one I get asked a lot as well.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Long question.
That's why I thought we'd put that up there. It is a really good question.
So look, if we look at cancer, we know that, for example, obviously there's so many different types of cancer, right? But we know that there's the vaccine against the human papillomavirus, right? Which is a virus that's thought to be related to why women get cervical cancer. So there is a vaccine now available to help prevent cervical cancer. Obviously for lung cancer and bowel cancer and prostate cancer and breast cancer, all the others, obviously there's no vaccine available for them at this stage, right? Diabetes we know is a problem related to, particularly for type 2 diabetes, a problem related to obesity, right? And unfortunately, the pancreas can't keep up and produce enough insulin, and also people become insulin resistant. So it's something quite different. It's not caused by a virus. It's caused by the body not being able to keep up with the demand for insulin, right? So different sort of mechanism there. So they mentioned cancer, diabetes. Was there a third one there, bro, in that question? Diabetes, etc. Okay, all right. I hope that answers it really there. Cancer, we've got things against cervical cancer, but all the other cancers, no, not at this stage. But a lot of research is being done to try and look at whether they can prevent these things. Dementia is another problem, right? It would be great if we could prevent dementia. It affects a lot of our people, just like strokes do, and just like heart attacks do. Some of these things are lifestyle things rather than vaccine or virus related.
There is a cure for type 2 diabetes, and it's called BBM. It's a solution. We've had people that are type 2 diabetic for years and years and years, and after a few months of being in BBM, no longer type 2 diabetic. So like you said, that's type 2 diabetes is caused by lifestyle,
Yeah. If you can lose the weight, by whatever means that is, whether it be BBM, whether it be, just looking at your nutrition, right? That's what you eat. 80% for a lot of people, 80% of weight loss relates to diet,
Yeah.
right? So looking at what you eat is so important. And yeah, but good question. Another good question.
Well, just before we finish, bro, again, thank you so much for your time.
Okay.
What would you say to someone that's out there and they might have a sick relative at home or sick relative in their family, and they're sitting on the fence as to whether to get vaccinated or not, don't want to be forced to? What would you say to people like that? Because there's lots of our people out there that are sitting on the fence, that do have sick family, but they're not wanting to go get vaccinated.
So they have to ask themselves, how much do they love that person, and how would they feel if they got COVID and brought it home to their loved one? I think they would feel so guilty if that loved one of theirs passed away and they brought home the virus. So, and we're talking about people of all ages, right? That could be a loved one that's a child or a baby, not just an old person, right? But there are lots of our people who are sick at a very young age. Like I did a death certificate today for someone who's only 47 and he was going to be 48 tomorrow, right? Māori fella. And when those that go early, then you would have liked them to have gone. I mean, you always sort of think, could we have done anything to save them? And whether that be just encouraging them to try and have a healthy weight. I was talking to a young girl today who's in her 20s. She's got kidney failure. She's Tongan. And we were joking, talking about how she was the rebellious one and never listened to her mum and dad and so forth. And she got gout. and I told her that she got gout because God was telling her that she was being naughty and needed to go get her blood test done because she was up for dialysis. She laughed when I sort of said that, but that was just Pacific humor. And often, I joke with my patients whenever they get gout and tell them it's because they've been naughty. And what have they been doing, and they've either had some alcohol that they shouldn't have had or something like that, and it's always a joke amongst family, in terms of, the wife jeering on the husband about not listening to her or something like that. But yeah, I think that if we can do anything to protect our loved ones, encourage them to do well, and stay healthy, then, as you say, bro, if we can just help one person to get vaccinated who's been listening to the messages, hear about the benefits, can make up their mind, that they've had to listen to what we've had to say and not be scared. Because, I mean, it's scary for people because it's new, right? This is all new. COVID was new. I remember when it came along last year, we were just scrambling to get information so that we could know what was the best thing to do, best thing to advise. And, it caused a lot of violence in the community where people were panicking, right? And at the moment, there's a lot of fear out there still. And I think if we can help to allay any fears about getting the vaccine and getting safe, making their family safe, making themselves safe. If we can help anyone to get vaccinated, that's success.
Yeah, and I think we've definitely succeeded in that, bro. Lots of people have made the decision. But also, team, we need to make sure that we're not comparing ourselves to America, what's going on over there, or the UK. We're different. We're New Zealand. We've done things differently. I think, what's the American rollout been in terms of what vaccine are they using? They're using a whole host of different ones, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they've been using Moderna and a few others. I was hearing something about the UK just the other day where they were celebrating something to do with all their freedoms, and at the same time they said they were having 2,000 cases a day.
It's still a whole heap of deaths,
Yeah.
Yeah, so Yeah, no, thanks again, bro. And look, I think it's important we continue to do these every week. And again, to everyone that's just joining in, we're nothing to do with the government. We haven't been asked by the government or any health departments, any health agencies to do these. This is our taking us a time away from our families to do this, to try and help people that are on the fence, just to get some good information and not get information from anti-vaxxers and Facebook and YouTube. Thank you so much, also.
No worries. Also, have a good week, eh?
I'll see you all on the same bean time and the same bean channel. No excuses. Thank you, bro.
Okay, take care, eh?
Yeah, bye.
Yeah.
Hey, team, thanks so much for joining us. We will go through and moderate the comments. Anyone that's been silly in the comments, we're just going to block. Okay, we're trying to get some information out there, but we appreciate everyone, and please, everyone, stay safe. And if you do need help, make sure you reach out to us. There is an email there that you can just message me and I'll send you the email. If you need help for food, we're here to help you. We're here to serve our community, vaccinated or not, in terms of our food bank. And we'll make announcements with what we're going to do for our training. Our training, when our boot camps do start back again, we will make more announcements as the week goes on, the months go on. I think, man, we'll be back soon. Much love, team. Good night. Stay safe, and God bless.